should be pictures in
Okay.
there of it. Let's see if I can find a good picture in here. Let's see.
I wouldn't know it if I saw it.
But the 18-inch was like one edge of it that you scraped.
Correct, so you would just basically, like, you'd have your
Oh,
100-foot
maybe like-
canopy break, and then,
Oh.
and then you would have an
You know,
18-inch
Maybe?
line on the back third.
It was basically down to dirt.
Down the
Dirt.
dirt.
Yep.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yep, so that's what
Okay.
you're burning off of, and then if you're burning, you're taking drip torches, which is a combination of diesel fuel and gasoline, and then it creates kind of like a thicker mixture, and you're just dropping that on the ground, and then that's lighting the.
Then it goes the black direction, not
Yes.
the green direction.
Yeah, ideally, not all the time, sometimes it's like, oh crap, the wind shifted, there's a spot fire, let's go get it, but,
Okay.
and then it blows up, and, yeah.
So how do you fight fires if you're down there and something like, do you
Sure.
have like fire extinguishers, water?
So
Need to
you
put
will use
extra
water,
into it.
but again, in the mountains, it can be,
Nice
water is very
picture.
limited,
Right,
so, if you have the ability to use waters and hose lays and pumps and that sort of thing, absolutely, yes, there's engines, but, you know, we fight fires in the mountains, so, I mean, most of the time you don't have access to water, excuse me, but we will have, we would call them pumpkins, I don't know what the technical term for them was, but basically it was just this big orange pool looking thing. You know, they could be as big around as this table and this tall, or way bigger. But sometimes we would set those up, on the fire line, off of the fire, and then you would have bucket drops that would either fill those from helicopters, and then you would run hoses, or you would pull that water from a pump, and then you could lay hose and spray water. Or you could have a pump, say, down below that pumpkin at a creek bed, and you're pulling water from that creek bed, filling the pumpkin, and then having another pump pulling water from that, because you need multiple, and there's math and physics that goes into it, but I mean, if you have like a certain grade slope, you're gonna need multiple pumps to pull water over a certain
Generate a lot of
distance.
head, because you gotta get up.
Correct, yeah, so, but yeah, so in order to fight these fires, I mean, if we could use heavy equipment, we would. Dozers, some of those dozer operators out there, phenomenal. But they can still only get so far once in a while. I've seen them take their dozers up some really steep terrain, which saves us a lot of time. But, so we got dozers, helicopters, fire retardant drops, so I mean, it's that like sticky pink substance that they drop over, which is supposed to slow the fire down a little bit. And then a lot of times it's just putting in fire line and then ultimately backfiring. So you're taking those drip torches and you're just putting fire on the ground and you're letting it build up and you're letting that fire run into the flank of the actual wildfire itself. So it basically is burning all of the fuel between you and the fire up so it can't continue that direction.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the gist of wildland firefighting.
You said
essentially.
16 hours days for 2 weeks straight.
Yep, and that wasn't all like right on the fire line.
Yeah.
You know, that was getting up, going to get breakfast at fire camp, or if you were spiked out, then you need something quick. Going to your assignment, doing your assignment, coming back, finally going to sleep. So yeah, that's,
Wow.
I mean, you're looking at probably of actual labor, I mean, probably 12, 14 hours a day.
Only a 14-hour.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but yeah.
How much weight did you have to carry?
It kind of depended. I mean, as a sawyer, you of course carried a chainsaw, plus you're wearing chaps. So I had a chainsaw. It was a steel 461 with a 28-inch bar. I think those are anywhere from, they're around 15 to 20 pounds, I think. And then your pack was, it probably varied from like 30 to 45 pounds. During critical training, you had to have 45-pound packs. That's kind of the standard. But then, of course, you know, depending upon what you bring or don't need, then you can kind of take it out accordingly. Yeah. But so yeah, you're on top of working in the mountains on fire. You're also carrying a pack most of the time, and you're moving these big buck logs out of the way and cutting fire line and all that kind of stuff. So.
And you're not walking down a nicely cut path either.
No, it looks like it after we're done.
Yeah.
What's in your pack?
So our fire shelters, I don't think you could ever get me under one of those things, but I think I would just, quite honestly, literally, I would probably just run away and take my chances, but that's me personally. So those, we had those, and then we would generally, the guys who were not sawyers, they would have canisters that were full of extra oil, bar oil, and gasoline for the sawyers, because if we were cutting a lot, we can only carry so much as well. So yeah, as sawyers, we would carry the chainsaw, we would carry our pound ski with a dolly, we called it, but it was a gas can essentially. One part of it was fuel, and then the other had one part of it that was oil, bar oil. So we would oftentimes burn through those in a day. And yeah, so that, and then water, food, rain jacket, that kind of stuff, tools that are like wedges, tool sharpening equipment, things of that nature, and then whatever else you kind of wanted to throw in there. So yes, mother.
How do you qualify to become a sawyer?
You had to make it up the mountain with a chainsaw in a certain amount of time, but then also you had to, I guess, prove that you were capable of cutting as well. And you just be like, okay, get up the mountain. If you make it up with a chainsaw, you can cut trees down. No.
So when you were growing up, did you operate chainsaws?
A little bit, but not nearly as much as I did. I mean, I really learned how to operate a chainsaw efficiently on the hot shot crew. Actually, the first time I ever operated one on the crew, we were doing work. This was right before fire season. We were done with critical training, I believe, but sometimes there's a lull between criticals and a fire assignment, so we would do what's called project work. So we would go into the national forests, and whatever the forest district had that they needed to do, we would help them out with that. So we might put in a trail, hiking trail, or we might cut out meadows for elk habitat or something to that effect. So we were doing that one day, cutting out meadows, I think. It was the first day I ran a chainsaw. It was my first year, so I was not on a chainsaw as a primary tool that year. Towards the second half of that year, I did run a chainsaw quite a bit. I actually chapped myself twice that day. So on the wind down on the saw, I didn't flip it back over, so like I just kind of hit my chaps twice, and I didn't really think anything of it because it's like, oh, that's what chaps are there for, right? I mean, and then my squad leader, we were sitting down and getting a bite to eat. And he's like, "Did you chap yourself, dude?" I'm like, "Yeah, I actually chapped myself twice." He's like, "Oh, well, that's not good." So we actually, my foreman that day, we would at the end of the day we would always kind of circle up, and then we would talk about the day and what went wrong, what went right, that sort of thing, kind of safety brief stuff. And my foreman was sitting in the circle. He's like, "So, anyone chapped themselves today?" Twice. Okay, yeah, but I still got to run a chainsaw. So I've never to this day ever chapped myself again. I'm not saying it can't happen, but I mean, I think it was one of those things where I did it once and it didn't really register, and then the second time I did it, and then after we talked about it, it's like, oh, like that's actually a big deal. So yeah, but they still afforded me the opportunity.
So did you get all the way through the chap?
No,
Like it just
no.
like-
I mean, they're Kevlar lined,
Okay.
or they're like Kevlar fibers or whatever.
Okay.
So it's designed like if that chain hits, it's designed to tear and tangle that.
chains.
Yeah, and it was right on the wind down as it was almost
Oh, okay.
idling, and so it was very minute, but
Okay.
still.
Yeah.
Now I got it burned into my head every time I'm walking around with the chainsaw to make sure I'm walking with it properly. So
It's a good lesson.
yeah, yes it was, definitely. So
Any other questions? Chris?
I have statement one, and I have a question. You and your mom are probably gonna have a long talk.
I don't know, there's one thing I'm not gonna talk about, and we've had a long talk about that already. So I won't bring that
Spare
up.
us.
And I would imagine she's
really happy to have you home.
Yeah, I think so, I think so.
Lot
The
less
other one
sleepless
is,
nights.
can you tell me how I sent off that alarm that night?
Oh, on your phone?
Yeah,
I don't
we
know,
can't figure it out.
I think there's some sort of, I don't know how you do it. I mean, there's something on your phone that you probably hit numerous times and then it automatically dials 911.
It
And,
was so weird. Don't do it, guys.
yeah,
Don't
you
do
can
it.
turn the settings off on your phone somehow, but I'm technologically deficient, so.
So you showed up at Chris's house thinking
I
that it was an
called.
emergency?
I
called.
called, so, yeah, I knew, yeah, if there are 911 follow-ups, depending upon what the situation is and who it is, because it happens very often nowadays, just with the new technology, it's not uncommon at all.
So if you have an emergency, you dial 911, then it gets to your police officer?
It gets to our dispatch.
Okay.
This was just hitting
Yep.
buttons and I don't know what it is. But it's loud.
Okay.
I think the worst part is when she set it on the table, went to the front window watching for the police to come, and when when the dispatcher called back,
Yep.
she says, "Jim, answer the phone." I was like, "No, wait."
You had a question.
We took an Alaskan tour,
Okay.
rode a bus from Fairbanks
Yep.
over the top of the world
Mhm.
and all the way down to the Klondike, I guess.
Mhm.
And we could see a forest fire
Mhm.
that whole distance.
Yeah.
Of course, we were fed whatever the guides told us,
Right.
but
Right.
they claimed that they just let those burn out.
Yeah, some of them they do. It depends upon where they are. And I think that the Forest Service they've known this for a while now, but they're trying to allow these fires to burn as often as they can, or as much as they can. Because they recognize, one, it's good for the ecosystem. Fire is a natural occurring thing, and it allows for regeneration and that sort of thing. But we've put them out so often over the last, say, 150 years, give or take, that's one of the reasons why these fires are so hot and why there are so many of them now, is because we've just put them out since the turn of the century. Because we thought that back then it's like, oh no, like we gotta put these out, because they had one back in, I think it was 1908 or 1911, somewhere right in there. But it was called the Big Burn. It was in the Idaho Panhandle, and it moved into Montana, and it destroyed like millions of acres, if I remember correctly. But so after that incident, and it took out a lot of towns and stuff, and of course everything back then was made out of wood. So everything got torched. After that, it was like, we need to put these fires out. Like, every single one of them we are putting out. And now the Forest Service is like, oh, we actually probably shouldn't do that, because we're actually making it worse for ourselves, because now you're having all this fuel buildup, and that allows for more beetle kills, so dead and down trees. So now these fires and now there's also more people in these mountainous areas. 9 out of 10 forest fires are started by humans, whether that's campfires, cigarettes, exhaust, railroad tracks, whatever. So it's kind of a conundrum, and kind of a catch-22 really, where they want to allow these fires to burn, but everybody wants to live in the mountains, and so they're faced with putting them out anyway, because you got to save the structures, or try to. But so yeah. Where were we going with that? I don't even remember, but.
You just said they saw a lot of fires.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
Did you get to see a lot of animals when you were out? Like,
Yeah, we would see bears once in a while, moose. I mean, they know what's going on. I mean,
Yeah.
they kind of scoot out of there. And we crawled in a bear den once that we found up on the Kootenai National Forest in Montana. I mean, this was in, I think, September or October, so it was like an old one from. We were actually chipping brush that day. It was kind of a weird fire assignment, and we found this bear den. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna crawl in that, see what it looks like. So I did.
Sue, did you know about that? You didn't know about that?
Yeah.
So, well, the altitude must have had a little effect on you too.
I would say like right off the bat it did, but you acclimate to pretty quick. So I mean, like as a flatlander coming from, at the time, North Carolina, sea level essentially, to Helena's around, I think Helena sits around 4,000, 4,500. So, you know, I'm thinking, especially for when we're doing critical training and things, you know, so the way we were allowed to fight fire on the crew, to qualify to fight fire, our crew had this qualification where you had to climb up Mount Helena on the power line trail, which is just a straight shot to the summit. And I think it covered about 3/4 of a mile, and your elevation gain was, I think, around 1,500 feet, so it was super steep. But you had to do that in a half an hour or less with all of your gear on. And so I was thinking, like, you know, I'm like, I want to run a chainsaw my first year, so I'm going to take the chainsaw. I'm like, I'm a Marine, I can do this. Like, you know, I just got out, I'm good. Well, I was not.
How'd you do it the first time?
I was not. So the second time we did it, I dished the chainsaw and I just took a tool. I'm like, all right, I need to actually get up here in 30 minutes or less. So yeah, and then the second year I did it. But yeah, so the altitude, I mean, it definitely, when you're not used to it, yes, it does have an effect on you. But I mean, you get accustomed to it pretty quickly, I would say. So, yep.
Any other questions?
Could you explain the difference between a Canadian hotshot and an American hotshot in regard to the equipment that they have and such?
Oh, well, they don't have hotshot crews up there. They just have, I don't know what they call them, just firefighters, I guess. But I wouldn't say there's a big difference, but they fight fires up there a lot more lackadaisically,
I
probably.
was gonna say, there's a lot of fires going on
Yeah.
right now in
Yeah.
Canada. Is anybody doing anything about that?
They
Or just
up
like-
there, they are very good actually about it. I mean, if there are fires up there and it's not a community, they'll let it burn. I
Okay.
mean, like I said, I mean, the one that we were on was 750,000 acres. The ones this year up there were some of them well over 1 million acres. So that's why we had all that smoke down here this
Yeah,
year was from the
right.
Canadian
Yeah.
wildfires.
And they weren't even trying to put them out for the most part, unless
No.
they were in a populated area.
Right,
Okay.
yeah, so yeah, if they let them burn, they will. It's kind of cool, like those really big fires, I shouldn't even say those really big ones, but big fires, they will create their own weather as well. So you'll get the column that shoots up into the atmosphere, and then eventually, like, that's gonna collapse on itself, and when it does, that creates precipitation, lightning, and it just basically sucks in on itself, and it creates all that stuff. So I mean, when we were in Canada, we drove through a storm that was created by the column collapsing on itself, essentially. That was kind of cool, actually. But yeah, so I mean, these columns can get extremely large, and that's where all that smoke comes from down here too. So I mean, what you witnessed this year as far as smoke, that's very common every single year out west. I mean, and worse. Like what we had here was quite honestly peanuts compared to what they go through out west every year. So
Well, we like to complain about it.
yeah, of course, yeah.
Any other questions? All right, well, Will, I want to thank you very much for coming
Yeah.
and introducing not only one of our policemen, but also all these experiences that you had that we'll never have, and it's really good to learn about.
Thank God.
Well, yeah, I'm definitely happy I could come in and talk about it. So
Right, great.
thanks for having me.
No, you're welcome, thank you very much.